lovely people. I hope that you can see me and hear me well. Please give me a sign if so. this would be nice. And yeah, so I can see that we're already gathering. Hello there. Instagram is having some sort of a new phase, so I hope it's nothing's different. So hi guys, hi Gabriel, hello Mona, hello Lydia, Gabriel again, Dimov. Hey there guys, it's so nice to see you. Sirakova. Okay, perfect. So we are gathering here, and you probably know that today we're going to talk to a fellow photographer, Gavin Goodman. So I am Virginia White. I'm a fashion and advertising photographer, and this is part of the Fashion Photography Podcast. We're trying out something new, and probably after that you'll be able to see it, not straight away, not right after, but you'll be able to see this conversation between me and Gavin also on our YouTube channel, at the Fashion Photography Podcast, and also, of course, on our website. And soon after, you'll be able to just listen to it like a true podcast. So I can see that there are some people joining, and I can also see Gavin. So guys, there is perfect. Thank you, Mona, for this great feedback. So I think that there is a little bit of a delay from the moment that we talk till the moment that you get our message. So keep that in mind. And also, very important, please make sure to use the little icon with a question mark in it, because I'll do my best to go over all of your comments, but I think that if you use it, we can just go back to your question regardless of the history in the comment section. So please use that little button, because it's going to be great. And I'm so happy to welcome now also Gavin, right? Let's see. You can guys give us some feedback, whether you can hear us properly and see us properly. This is so very important. And yes, we finally have connection now. Hello, Gavin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How's the sound? Is it all right?
For me, it's perfect. Let's see what people will say. So, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Gavin Goodman. Born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa. I used to, after film school, I spent a number of years working in the film industry as a cinematographer, light and cameraman. And then I sort of slowly transitioned over to the world of stills. And yeah, I guess I've been working as a still photographer or cinematographer professionally for about 15, 16, 17 years, somewhere around there. And I'm sort of a surfer. I'm really passionate about the ocean. Been surfing since as long as I can remember. Come from a family of surfers. And yeah, that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Yeah, it was very funny for me when you sent me the photo that I was able to use for your introduction.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he guys sent me 2 photos, and he was like, you can choose whatever you like. I was like, man, I've never seen a photographer on a surfboard before with a suit.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely using this one. That's awesome. So you first started with film, and then you moved to stills, which is usually the opposite of what people do.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
Yeah, it is a little bit of the opposite, but you know, I suppose there's no real kind of, everyone has their own path and their own story of how they got to where they are and where they're going. So yeah, I guess for me it's actually been quite a great sort of start in terms of moving from the film world to the stills world, because yeah, I guess in my opinion, the you know, the cinematographers and the guys that work in the film industry, it's there's a lot more elements, and it's a bit more complex when you come to the technicalities of lighting and camera, and there's a lot more things that you need to pay attention to. It's not as simple as freezing an image and cleaning up things, and you got to kind of get a lot of stuff in camera, and you're using continuous lighting, so you don't have like a flash that has the power of like 20 film lights. So, and you know, if you're lighting a space, you got to kind of lighter space for people to move around in. And so for me, I guess it was a really good way to understand lights in a way that's maybe different to the stereotypical photographer. And yeah, when I moved over to stills, I obviously used my understanding of lights and, you know, how it worked for me, and sort of translated that into the stills world. And yeah, so it's I guess I don't see it as unusual, but you know.
Well, obviously, light is not a problem for you since you've got huge sets in your portfolio, and you are so obviously used to lighting cars, lighting all types of sets. So, what is the most difficult thing for you right now in photography?
The
I know
most difficult.
maybe it's yeah, maybe it's the COVID situation, maybe it's something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess this kind of like unknown, you know, like this month, for example, I was penciled on 3 jobs, and they also fell through. They're all European clients that were meant to come down here. So I guess it's this kind of uncertainty as to, you know, what's going to happen and where things are going. But on the plus side, I think for now, Cape Town is actually quite like it has definitely like some draw to the international clients, because I guess compared to a lot of other places in the world, we're in a pretty relaxed stage of lockdown, and the other competitive countries where a lot of the international productions usually go to, like Prague and South America, not much of an option. So it seems like we've got quite a lot of movement happening in the commercial world, you know, but it's just so unpredictable right now. And yeah, I kind of also go through this ebb and flow of not knowing what the hell's going on, to like feeling quite fortunate about the job potentials that are coming my way. And yeah, it's definitely an unusual time, but yeah, I guess, you know, there's not much point in wallowing in all the negativity, because it's not going to help too much. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Plus, I think that every time that we get into this groove of thinking of all the negative things, we're just falling like into a hole of negative things. So I think it's going to be better if we turn not just in this conversation, but in our life overall, if we turn to coming up with creative ways to just turn things into something that will help
Yes.
you in the long run.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you were starting your career today, because you started more than 15 years ago. Things used to be different back then.
Yes.
What if you were starting today? What would you do differently? What would you do overall?
I mean, I guess if I was starting today, it would probably be maybe a little more daunting, because there's just so many more image makers out there, and it's so much more accessible to call yourself a photographer or a cinematographer or videographer or whatever. And yeah, there's just a lot more content creators, and I guess what I would maybe do today is not that much different to what I was doing when I was starting out. You know, contacting people whose work I admire, trying to get, you know, on-set experience, offering my time for free to learn from people whose work I seem to connect with, and yeah, just sort of continuing to hustle, and most importantly, shooting personal projects, and creating your own stuff, because it's all very well to learn and to watch videos and to watch people work, but the real learning comes in doing. So yeah, I guess it's a combination of both, you know.
Completely agree with you. Okay, so tell me, do you remember your very first paid client?
No, I don't. I don't. I mean, I can kind of go back to when I was in film school. I started doing a bit of assisting on stills and film shoots, and I guess my first paid client probably started before I even went to film school. I used to be obsessed with the little mini DV video cam and cutting my own little video clips, and I used to get paid to go to like nightclubs and shoot little promo videos for the alcohol brands and those kind of things, and cut together these kind of things. But yeah, I guess it's I've always sort of been been sort of interested in the image making process. It's just very much kind of progressed and evolved over the years.
Okay, let me tweak this question a little bit.
Okay.
Do you remember the very first time that you went to set and you were like, oh my God, I'm actually doing it. I'm
Yes.
actually succeeding in this profession. Okay, tell me about it.
Well, I guess it probably was. I was working in the film industry for about 6-7 years as a cinematographer, and when I decided to move over to the world of stills, I kind of remember that first real stills job that I got. I remember getting the call sheet and seeing my name on the top as the photographer, with the agency and all that. And I kind of, when you rock up on set, you don't really want client agency and this assistants, people around you you got to kind of make out as if this is another day at the office. But I do remember feeling a little bit of a daunting kind of experience, knowing that this is quite like this is marking the beginning of something. And it wasn't overwhelming, but it was, I was just aware that this is like the beginning of this new shift to be it's one thing to do your own shoots, but when you kind of get paid and you get hired and you have that responsibility to execute a brief, it has like a slightly different weight to it,
Yeah.
And I do remember that as a more of an exciting day than like a nerve-wracking, daunting day. It was, I think I remember when I saw the call sheet the day before. That's kind of when it hit me. That, okay, this is happening. This is real,
Do you feel like you're now into, like, are you used to it now? Or you're still a little bit worried before each and every day? And guys, I just want to remember and to remind to the audience that you guys can ask questions because we are live. So this is the chance that you get. Please do use the little box with the question, because there we can collect your questions and go over them like a little bit later.
What was the question again? Oh, do I still, I think it depends on the job, but a lot of the time it's if it's like a really big production when there's 60, 70 people on set, and there's like a monstrous budget involved, and a lot of the time you can, for these bigger setups, you can always run through what I'm going to do in my head before each shot, each planned shot. I run through how I'm going to light it, whatever, but there's always so many elements of uncertainty. You don't know exactly what the weather's going to be like, what the wind's going to be like, and those kind of things always are a little scary. I can never get used to it, but it's not something that I feel like that I'm not able to kind of work through, because I've been in so many worst case scenarios. I think it's more of just a kind of a responsibility, and I'm also a little bit of a perfectionist, and I take a lot of pride in what I do. So you often get that you get slightly anxious where, like, shit, I hope all the elements don't go against me, and so there's sometimes a little bit of that, but not nearly as much as there used to be, for sure. But there's always some of that, and I think if you don't have that, then maybe this is something that you're getting bored, or you're not taking it serious enough, because I think you have to feel a little bit of that, and that reminds you that you still passionate about what you do, and you want to get the best out of each job.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Jared is having a question for you, and it's actually one of my questions, so thank you, Jared, for this. What was the most challenging job to light?
I would say probably in my cinematographer days, it was my first studio car job, and it was for a VW spot where we had to light. There were 4 or 5 cars in one day in a big drive-in studio, and I'd only shot cars once or twice in an exterior environment, and the client and agency didn't know this. So I had like a long chat with my gaffer, and I planned a few things of the setups. But I remember rocking up on set in this massive indoor studio, and I had one day to light 4 or 5 different cars, and each car has got different curves and shapes, and when you're working with cars, you're essentially you're not really lighting the car, but you're lighting what the car reflects, what it sees. And yeah, I do remember feeling like, sure, this is going to be quite a task. But you know what happens is you get into a groove, and you sort of you kind of work things. It's almost like a problem where you don't know exactly how you're going to do it, but you put up one light, and then you see what it's doing, and you kind of get into this organic flow where you kind of forget about, you know, what if or the problems or whatever, and you kind of paint by numbers, and you add another light, and you start to tweak things, and that light doesn't work, so you turn it off. And yeah, I got into like a good groove, and I had a good team, and I realized it wasn't actually as challenging as I thought it would be in my head, but it was a tricky day because there was a lot to do in one day. And you know, I've had lots of tricky scenarios where things don't go according to plan. Like, for example, I was on a job a couple of years ago for a big pharmaceutical brand, and I was supposed to just be shooting the same setups as the TV, so I didn't have a big lighting kit with me, and they were scheduled to shoot at the exterior of this bar and outside of a road where the bar was in the background, and they ended up getting really behind schedule. And so by the time it was my turn to shoot, the sun had set and it was dark, and I had to light the subjects and the interior of this bar, and I had enough lights to shoot like one portrait on a backdrop, and that was really challenging. It took me about an hour and a half to get the setup right. But yeah, I sort of, in the moment, I don't know if I'm enjoying it that much, but in hindsight, I kind of love the challenge of not having everything planned, and trying to figure out how you're going to do this. And for me, that's sort of part of the fun of not having everything sort of prepped and on a silver platter. And yeah, so it's the challenges sometimes can be kind of fun if you have the right personality for it, you know.
Do you actually, I was wondering, you said that you are discussing this usually with your team, but do you have fellow photographers that you can talk to when you're off work and you can just discuss photography stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I actually noticed a couple of years ago, maybe 3, 4 years ago, that some of my friends that are photographers, a small group of us, I was sharing a studio space with a few photographers, and the studio was rented out to other productions. And I remember one or two of the photographers, 10, 12 years ago, they were assisting other photographers. And now those friends of mine are shooting, and they're really good at what they do. And, they have their own group of assistants. And I remember being aware that, like, it's almost like I'm part of this next generation of younger guys that used to be, assisting other photographers. And now I'm sort of at the stage where, I'm kind of progressing onto this next sort of stage where me and my contemporaries are booking these jobs that I was, looking up to, where other photographers were booking. And, it's such a long, slow process that you sometimes you're not conscious that it's happening. But yeah, I've got a couple friends that are amazing photographers, and we always help each other. I'm a strong believer in sort of sharing knowledge, and I often bring young assistants onto jobs, as like a second, third, fourth assistant, just for them to kind of be exposed to other things. And I'm not one of those guys that is secretive about what I do. And I was lucky enough to shadow a few amazing cinematographers back in the day, and I think it's an important thing to kind of, it's an important quality to have. And the end of the day, we all kind of trying to follow this passion path, and it's important to share,
Absolutely agree. Have you ever felt like these photographers that you have helped are a little bit envy to your success?
Maybe, but I mean, it's not really something that's important to me, because if they're envious or they're whatever, it's their own stuff they need to deal with, and it doesn't really affect me. But I know that, there are a lot of old school photographers that maybe might be a little bitter about the young generation, and how, there's this hierarchy that they followed coming up, and a lot of the younger guys, they have a big Instagram following, and they've got maybe 6 months experience, and they're taking jobs that, guys with 30 or 40 years experience are pitching for. And there's obviously naturally a little bit of resentment from the old school guys, but this is the nature of the world we're living in today. And if if you focus on that and you get all irritated and pissed off, it's not really gonna help you. So it's good just to be aware of, you know, how the world is working and how it's changing. But I guess if you focus on it too much, it's only gonna like be detrimental to your own career path. So yeah.
I actually had a conversation today about these changes that we can see in the world between old generations and new generations. And, you know, for example, today we were talking about this method of giving your work to clients by licensing it. And many people that are coming and new to the industry, they're just pricing their day, and they're like, hey, my price for this project, it's my day rate, and you can have 5 or 50 images,
Yes.
as much as you want. So I was like in between, because maybe I'm in this generation that's in between actually.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not sure if this is like the end of photography or it's something good and it's new transition. So it was very interesting to me, because the new photographer actually said, you know what, I'm not ever gonna use these images again. And the client is probably gonna use them for 6 months up to a year. So for me, that's something normal. And I was like, okay, there is truth to that. There is truth to that, right? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of, you know, the world of photography, the commercial space, the way images are being used in the advertising space has changed a lot. And I've seen it from when I started out to now. And, you know, when I started out, there was a lot more craft involved in the advertising space, where a lot of the images were for billboard, they were for print magazine. They would, you know, you would get a brief where there's like 1, 2, 3 images in a full day, and you craft the images and you tell that story with the team. And because of just the way media and is consumed these days, there's so many more channels, and you know, the Instagram and all the social media avenues, and print is kind of not so much the primary point of advertising. And so I guess it's the nature of how, you know, these images are sort of created has changed a lot due to, you know, the nature of the world we're living in today. And I was for quite a while a little bit frustrated about that, because I would get the same brief from many years back where they need like 10 to 15 images, and you don't have much time to craft on a lot of these jobs. You've got to shoot really quickly because they just need so much more content. And I guess, yeah, you know, there's always going to be a group of people that are happy to undercut to get the job. And you know, you can't really control that. It's always going to be that way. So the way I see it is that I have an amazing agent, and I'm lucky that she deals with a lot of the costings and the quoting. And the way I see it is that if someone, it's the same idea as, you know, you pay for what you get to a large extent. So if there's a client that's very new and maybe I don't connect with the brand and it's a bit more of a money job, then I say, let someone that undercuts, let them shoot that job. It will probably be better suited for them, as opposed to a brand that's really established. They have the budget. They'd rather get someone that has done this for many years, and they'll pay for it. You know. So there's always a place in the market for these different types of photographers. And yeah, I don't really harbor much on that anymore. But it is definitely, it's definitely a really interesting changing landscape. You can't deny it. And you got to kind of move with the changes. You can't complain and too much about it, because things are changing and moving, and you know, it's going to continue to be that way.
Things are definitely changing, especially with the COVID situation. What I'm seeing is that many makeup artists, for example, are doing some makeups at home, and then they're starting shooting. And because it's been like a whole year ever since the COVID started,
Yes.
for example, they are now shooting regularly. And
Yes.
also some photographers, for example, they're starting to do makeup. And now they can be like a one-man show and provide everything for the client, which is interesting because it cannot always be a match because like
Yeah,
I personally believe a person is good at one thing that will really dive into and that they can become the best, but you cannot be the best at, let's say, five different topics
yeah,
just because
yeah,
you don't have the time to
yeah.
study them well. But there are people that are really, really good at all these things.
Yes,
And that's very interesting for me. So yeah, you're right, things are changing, the time is changing, and it's very interesting when where things are going to go. But you mentioned your agent, and
yes,
I was wondering because many people in the audience are usually asking about agents and so on.
yes,
Do you want to tell us the story how you met your agent? And guys,
sure.
again, just to remind you, use the little question button down there next to the comment section and ask your questions there. Thank you. So,
Um,
how did you know your client?
well, I was with as a still photographer. I was um, with my agent for about 5, 6 years, um, and
Mhm.
then about a year and a half, I moved to a new agent. I was by myself with no agent for about 2 years, and then I've moved to another agent for about a year and a half ago. And when I first wanted to make that transition from the film world into the stills world, I was quite focused on having an agent, and I didn't have that much contacts in the stills world. So what I did was I've always had this sort of alter ego pseudonym as a wedding photographer. His name's Gavin Casey. So I just changed my surname. I've been doing weddings for about 12 years under like a different name, and that was sort of the bread and butter. Um, I sort of, shoot in quite a reportage, cinematic style, and I was doing a lot of the weddings. And what I decided to do was to spend the next year when I made that conscious decision to move over to stills, spend the next year to invest some of the money I was making as a wedding photographer into creating a portfolio of work that I would want to get paid to shoot down the line. And the truth is that when you show people work, they don't ask, oh, is this a real paid job? Is this not? If they like the work, they appreciate it, and and then they ask you questions about other stuff. So I sort of decided to set up my own personal projects, and I invested quite a bit of time and money into creating a portfolio of work that had a bit of my point of view. And I gave myself a year sort of deadline. And after that year was when I was going to approach agents and see if I could get signed. So I had this kind of plan in mind. And there was one agency that I really wanted to join. They were a boutique agency at that time. And I just sent a very confident email. I was watching Gary V blogs and all those things back then, and the art of marketing and communicating. And, I used very simple language. It was a one header email, explaining exactly what the email's about. So if the agent isn't interested in taking photographers, they wouldn't even open the email. And then I just said, this is who I am. This is a link to my work. I love what you guys do. I would love to set up a meeting. How does next week, Wednesday at 3 p.m. sound? Um, and so this agency got back to me. I set up a meeting. I showed them the work that I'd created, which was 80, 90% personal work. They didn't ask whether it was commercial or personal. And I ended up, after a few weeks, I ended up signing with them. And that's how I got my first agent. Yeah,
Basically, Gary Vee helped you.
he did.
I
Indeed.
did not expect that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. That was so cool.
Hmm.
Okay, so you said that you've been doing your homework on marketing, which is very interesting because I personally believe that nowadays you've got to do this as a photographer. Like, this is not something that you can skip on.
Yes.
So now that you have an agent, do you still do your homework
Yeah, for
on
sure.
marketing?
I think the right approach for a lot of photographers who have never been represented before, and they're really focused on getting an agent and getting represented. I think a lot of those photographers don't realize that when you get an agent, like, it doesn't change much. The truth is that a lot of agents, they focus on the established photographers because those are the photographers that have got a client base already. And they're not going to invest all their time and money into marketing you and pushing you. They'll spend a small portion of their time doing that, but the majority of their time is spent on their money makers and the established photographers that have the client base. And if a brief falls on their lap that is really perfect for this new photographer, then they'll put you forward. But I think the right attitude is to if you sign up with an agent, you almost can't you can't think that, oh, my career's made and I'm going to start to get all this work now. You got to carry on hustling, and you got to keep on doing your own thing, and you almost have to pretend like you don't have an agent, and you in the back of your mind, okay, you're going to get one or two briefs coming in time that you wouldn't have had the access to. But I think it's a real misconception that once you get signed, your career is made, because it's really not the case. And yeah, that, when I signed with my first agent, it took a few months before I got my first job. So I just had to carry on doing my own thing and carrying on marketing myself. And yeah, obviously you communicate with your agent as to what would be a good approach for marketing and get some contacts from them. But you can't really rely on your agent to just do everything for you if you're someone new that doesn't have a client base.
Since you already knew that information, why did you decide that you need an agent so bad?
Well,
Yeah,
it does
so
help.
bad,
It does help.
but...
I'm not gonna pretend like it doesn't help. It does make a difference. And I guess because I didn't have many connections in the stills world, I thought it would be a good way to get access to some new clients and some briefs that agents land on their desk every day. But I certainly didn't sort of assume that this was it now once I signed with him. That's just one of the most common misconceptions that I've heard over the years with a lot of up and coming photographers that are really focused on trying to sign up with an agent. And of course it helps, and it's definitely something that's important to pursue and to start to develop a relationship. But it takes a while, even when you sign up with best agent in the world, and so yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to your work. Thank you guys for your feedback about the sound. That was very important, since it's going to be also a podcast. So this was important. Thank you. Let's go back to your work. Tell me, what is the project that really scared you at the beginning, but now you truly love it? Like, you weren't so sure what to do on the set. You were like, oh my God, this is going to be hard. But after, right now, when you go back to it and you're like, oh, this set was amazing, I love it.
Probably one of the first jobs that I had to shoot like a still life bottles. It was when I decided I wanted to try and pursue the still life kind of world. It's a very technical, very slow. I'm a people person, so I feed off the energy of people, and I love shooting people. And
Same here.
yeah, so the still life world, yeah, photographing them, yes. And so the still life world is very different. It's very slow, very meticulous, very technical. And I think I remember one of the first jobs, it was for a beer brand, and we had 2 bottles to do in a full day, and I had to shoot different composites and plates, and there was all these different elements. And as I was starting to get a little bit concerned about the expectations of the client and agency. And yeah, the truth is, if you have confidence in yourself, people feed off that, and they can sense it. So I just kind of carried on doing what I knew I could do. And before I booked that job, I'd set up a couple tests with myself and a stylist in studio where there was no pressure, and I could take my time. And I just thought back to how I was doing those things. And yeah, it was pretty daunting at the time. And I think that's when I realized maybe this is not my forte. I like to dabble in that world, but yeah, it's definitely not my passion. The still life stuff. I mean, I like a conceptual still life when there's something weird and quirky, but the straight down the line commercial still life stuff isn't as exciting to me. But I do really love doing it every now and then. But as a full-time thing, I don't think it would give me as much pleasure.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to dive deeper into the odd world of yours, that the things that you like, a little bit quirky. But before that, Christian Bell is having a question for you. On your IG and website, you're promoting yourself as a photographer. Are you still working as a filmmaker? I love I cannot pronounce it. And Herman movie. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce it.
Um, yeah, I still do every now and then shoot video, but I don't work in the commercial production world as a lighting cameraman, cinematographer. You know, I was continuing to follow. I used to subscribe to the American Cinematographer magazine, and I was continuing to like always keep updated with all the technology, and eventually I just got a little. There's just so much kind of new updated technology and lighting and lenses and whatever in the motion picture world. It's pretty crazy, and I eventually just decided to stop following all those that evolution of the motion picture world, and every now and then I have, you know, I do shoot a motion piece, but I do it in a way that I feel comfortable in a smaller crew. You know, I use my stills camera with my prime lenses, and maybe get a little follow focus kit, and get one or two good assistants, and kind of do it in a way that I feel comfortable in doing. But I don't really pursue that sort of style of filmmaking anymore. And there is something that I do miss a little bit about that world. It's a real there's a lot more of a collaborative element that goes into making something with
Yeah.
motion. You know, you can't just, as a photographer, you know, you're sort of directing, you're shooting, you're lighting, you kind of have a lot more control. But in the motion picture world, there's so many more elements and things that come into creating a piece. There is something kind of fun about that collaborative process when everyone's on the same page, that I do miss every now and then. But I still work as a commercial photographer. I work quite a bit on big film sets, shooting the print stuff, for the clients, but on the TV production, where it's always different. Sometimes I get like 5 minutes to quickly shoot the print stuff after the TV guys are done. Sometimes I have my own setup where I've got a skeleton crew, and we quickly light the sets for print. Sometimes I got to set up backdrops and do my own thing. So I'm still in that world pretty often, which is enough for me. You know, it's a still get a little taste of it, and it's kind of fun. But I definitely prefer the worlds of stills, overall.
Okay, so big thanks to Christian for this question because it led to some very interesting answers. And thank you for this because now I've got a new question for you. If you can give advice to the people that are absolutely brand new to the commercial world, usually they're starting with some projects that are, let's say, the movie part of the advertising, and they just have to join, as you said, for 5 minutes per set, right? So
Yes.
do you have any particular um, advice for them that you can just help them out with something?
So you're referring to like younger photographers that are starting to
Yeah,
get commercial jobs. Um,
yeah,
uh, yeah, I mean, what I would say is, try not to look at what a lot of other photographers that are excelling in the commercial space. Try not to emulate what they do. And you know, a lot of photographers would think, well, if I want to make a career out of this, I need to look at like what in this region that I live in this country that I'm in this city that I'm in, what are the paying jobs? What style of photography is it? Lifestyle? What is the paid work? And then try and like emulate those photographers. I would say that's just kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because um, you the whole for me the key is to find your point of view. And for some people it takes a couple months to a year. For some people it takes 10 years. You know, it's a everyone has got their own sort of process in identifying what it is that they really connect with. And a lot of the time it's taking bits and pieces from other photographers whose work inspires you, and it's sort of this mesh of different elements of things you've seen, and something clicks in you where you like connect with a certain color palette, the style of lighting, the sort of look of a model, whether it's you love working in studio, or you much prefer stylized locations, or you know. And I guess the key is to not be too focused on what pays and what is the successful jobs out there, and rather, you know, just be a little more open-minded to find your point of view while still pursuing the commercial angle. And yeah, try not to have too much of an ego about going on other sets and working for free and seeing how other people work and you know, that's one of the best ways that you can figure out what works for you is you know, yeah, I mean, I'm saying that without having assisted much, but this is just, you know, I had a slightly different route, but it's definitely the easiest way to figure out your point of view is to be exposed to other people and take bits and pieces from them, you know?
And to shoot as much as you can, I think.
Yes,
Because
definitely,
if you,
100%.
yeah, if you only look at other people's work, or if only you sit and think of the things that you might like doing,
Yes.
this is not going to help. You have to shoot. Okay, so this is the first step to find your style. And then what's next? Or would you advise them to go look for agencies? Would you, like commercial agencies, would you advise them to look for, let's say, production houses?
Yeah, so I would say maybe while you're figuring out your point of view and shooting your own stuff, it's really nice to reach out to people in the industry that make up the team that you'll be working with in the commercial space. So stylists, hair and makeup artists, um, you know, lighting assistants, digi assistants, and seeing who are the types of people that you connect with on not just a work level, but a personal level. And you know, when you start to have like a small selection of people who you like to work with, it definitely helps you to create a team when you book those jobs, and you look better when you not some dude that's, you know, or some woman that's like you know, on a set with assistants you've never worked with before, and you know, you're trying to find your place while trying to create this dynamic. So I would say that's one thing to do. Another thing would be to you know, to just shoot personal work and send that work out to production companies, to producers, to agents, to and not just do it once. Like every time you have new work, don't feel like, oh, I'm going to irritate this person, and you know, just send your work out as long as it's stuff that you're proud of, and it's something that represents in some way a reflection of yourself. Yeah, just kind of, I mean, that's sort of how I got my first break as a cinematographer. I came out of film school. I assisted for a couple months. I was loading film. I was second, third assistant camera, and I realized like there's no ways I'm going to do this for the next few years. I really don't enjoy this whole assisting, you know, loading. It's really high pressure. You get treated terribly, and you know, this is the way to do it. But because I come from film school, I took the slightly cheeky approach where I had a show reel. I shot a bunch of stuff in film. I specialized in commercials for my fourth year at film school. So I just started approaching production companies, sending my reel, dropping off DVDs. That was the way to do it in those days. Um, and eventually, after approaching almost every single production company in my town, I got approached by one of the producers who their sort of lighting cameraman that had been working with them a lot had moved on to become a director, and they liked my style of lighting, and they gave me an opportunity, and then I did my first job, and then I did another one, and then, you know, the camera assist mentioned me on some other job, and then the producer approached, and, you know, and it was a slow process, but, you know, it takes time, and you got to have patience, and you got to also just remind yourself that this is working in this world and doing it as a profession. It's a very fortunate thing to be able to have a career doing this, and you got to be patient, and you got to really not put too much pressure on yourself, and have a side hustle. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't otherwise, you know, that time frame is going to become slightly less when you give up. And you know, I think having patience and allowing yourself, giving yourself the luxury of time to continue hustling is the best thing you can do, because it's you know, it's a tough world out there. There's so many creators, and you know, if you are passionate about it and you believe in that this is what you want to do, and you continue to shoot side projects, eventually it's going to come right. You know, you just got to have patience, and yeah, that's probably the best advice I could give, eh?
I love this, and I also love that it's towards the end of our conversation because it's going to be like a great takeaway. I
Cool.
would also mention that in nowadays world, we can simply create like a newsletter or something with the contacts of the people that we want to reach out to and just remind to them about us through this media. Because, for example, you had to go and leave CDs and so on, which was very time consuming and much harder than doing it today, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
would you try and approach like this with a newsletter, for example? How would you remind to people
I
if
think
you were
like
starting today?
the more avenues and channels you can explore, the better. You know, it's I don't think there's like, no, you shouldn't do that. It's not effective. You know, it's and also I guess in depending on where you are, there's slightly different approaches to people are more receptive to one form of marketing than another. So I don't think you can ever do too much. And yeah, I guess it's also a case of like not being too sort of linear with your approach. Like for me, I have a massive folder on my laptop whenever I'm watching a film on VLC or whatever. I'll just snapshot stuff. There's like a color palette or a lighting reference that I like, and I've got these folders of references, and you know, on my Instagram I've got saved folders of different inspiration, and you know, this is something that it's an ever evolving journey, and yeah, it's something that I guess you can never do. I would never say like don't do this, rather do this. You know, it's the more you do, the more you kind of figure out what works for you, and yeah, it's a continuing hustle. You can never if you become like really comfortable, and you think like you know, I've sort of made it, and you know, I don't think you're gonna. It's not the right attitude to have. So you got to be on your toes, and you got to keep creating, and you got to, yeah, you got to just keep sort of expanding your point of view, and you know, it's this is one of the things that I love about being a creator is that as you evolve as a person, um, your taste evolves and your point of view slowly evolves, and that has a direct effect and reflection on your work, and you have to be open and receptive to that and not have too much of I want to be a commercial photographer, I want to shoot beauty, so I'm only going to focus on that. And you know, you got to yeah, it's definitely a sort of an organic uh, you know, life career that yeah, it's something that it's one of the things that I love is that you can, I could never say I've mastered this, or you know, I've done everything there is to do in this category, so I'm moving on. It's just there's so much to learn and there's so much to do that it's, for me, it's part of what I love about this industry, you know.
We learned from you today a lot, I think. But for the end of the interview, you should like give us an example of two people that you would like to see here on your spot. So, have you
Okay.
come up with any names?
Oh, I forgot that I was meant to think of that, but I can do it off the spot.
You can do it now.
Yeah. So yes, I have a friend of mine. I'll send you the link to her work. Her name's Andrea Kativ. She is a young and
Perfect.
up and coming photographer. Her work is really beautiful, very moody. She's come on a lot of my shoots. She's got a very interesting aesthetic and point of view. And I think she's part of the younger generation. She's in her 20s. Um,
Perfect.
yeah, and you know, her contemporaries are different to mine in terms of you know where they are, the networks, the social networks, the things they're influenced by. I think that would be someone that's pretty cool. And
That's
then
lovely. But
yes,
before you mention the second person, guys, I just want to remind you this is the end of the interview. So if you have any questions, any final questions, now is the time to ask. So I'm sorry, Gavin.
yes, no
And there are
worries.
questions straight away.
Uh,
Okay, but let's hear who's the second person that you want to.
I mean, does this have to be a photographer or?
No, no, no,
Oh,
no. It has to be connected to the industry. That's
yes.
all.
Okay. I would maybe say my longtime stylist, Kirsten Lipschitz, who I create all my fine art work with.
Perfect.
Um, she's been doing this longer than I have, and yeah, she's kind of because she's a stylist, she works on a lot of big international productions, amazing photographers from all walks of life, and she's got a very interesting kind of point of view.
That's awesome. I would love to have these two lovely ladies also here. So
Yes.
thank you very much for this.
Cool.
I will ask for their details a little bit later, but
Sure.
let's see. There is a comment from Christian Bell. The series Speed Kills
Yes.
is striking. Could you talk about the creative process a little?
Sure. So that was a job for, I think it was for Ogilvy or one of the ad agencies. The client was the Western Cape government. So it was a campaign to, like, you know, you have the drunk driving campaigns.
Yeah.
It was just a kind of that kind of approach for the creators came up with this really interesting concept that is very stylized. It's essentially 2 or 3 close-ups of a foot about to press the accelerator, and below the accelerator is like an old man crossing the road. So the road was sort of the floor where the accelerator, accelerator pressed down would kind of squash this person. There was a kid playing with the ball. So the creative process was really interesting, where, you know, with these composites, to make it look realistic, especially if it's something that's quite conceptual and wouldn't actually happen in real life. There's a lot involved in, you know, in terms of what the color palette of everything, how you light the foot, you know, what environment do we light it in? Are we going to cause shadows on the person walking? So yeah, this creative process, essentially, we shot 3 close-ups of feet in studio. We bought some carpet that matched the interior of a carpet of a car, the floor of where the accelerator would be. There was the accelerator and brake that was rigged with C-stands off camera, and then a foot. And so I shot that as just the accelerator, brake, and a foot with a carpet as one image. And then I had to match the perspective of where the camera would be in relation to where a person would be walking. So we shot the foot and everything first, and then I used the way that the lighting was interacting in that scene as a reference to light the characters that were walking on the studio floor. Because the carpet is dark, the studio floor, we painted a dark color, so there wouldn't be any indirect, like, light bouncing, white bounce off. And it was super fun. And, you know, it was something we did in one day. We created these 3 images, and then it was a post-production thing where it got pieced together as a composite in post. And I was involved in looking at the first draft and making some comments, and, you know, seeing how maybe the light needs to be a little bit darker in this area, etc. And yeah, it was a fun team collaboration. That one, it actually ended up winning some award for something, I can't remember what, as a concept here in the local advertising world.
That's awesome. So in the comments, I see questions like, do you always use photographs, or sometimes you even involve CGI?
Sometimes I've done a few jobs with CGI, but for me, if I can get something in camera, that would be my first choice always. The only time I would ever do a composite or CGI is if it's absolutely not practical to create in camera. A lot of my work, it has a sort of a polished look to it, but most of it is sort of in camera work. Sometimes the CGI stuff can be fun from a technical point of view, but it gets really involved, and it's exciting to do, but it's also a really expensive process, and you need very specific projects to have that budget. And yeah, I do enjoy the composite stuff every now and then. I like making things fit from a perspective and lighting point of view, where you don't even notice that it's composite. It just looks like a nicely polished, retouched image. But I try to avoid the composite work when I can. I would only do it if it's really going to enhance the concept, and then if it will enhance the concept, then I'm really excited to do it, you know.
As we can actually see on your behind the scenes section on your website. So guys, if you haven't checked out his website yet, You can easily do it here in his Instagram profile. It's linked, so you can see the behind the scenes section. And guys, you will be amazed. Thank you so much, Gavin, for being our guest today. It was lovely
Cool.
to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great evening.
Okay, we'll chat soon. Ciao, Virginia.
Bye-bye.
Okay, ciao.
So guys, I really hope that you liked today's live. As I said, you'll be able to also see it on YouTube once it's ready, and just listen to it as a podcast on the Passion Photography podcast that is available pretty much on every podcasting platform. I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for your lovely comments. You were so amazing. Thank you so much for all these hearts. If you like Gavin, do not hesitate to follow his work here on Instagram. And if you've enjoyed this interview, please follow me also here on Instagram. And if you have any additional questions or any ideas, do not hesitate to reach out to me via DM. It was lovely to have you, and I cannot wait to see you again very, very soon. Have a lovely evening.